What do you say, everybody? It's time for Monday Night Quarterback. You're watching BamaInsider.com on YouTube, and we really appreciate all of you guys being here. Got so much to talk about today. I mean, look, you got Trey Yannity, you got Tony Tsoukalas, I'm Mick Gillespie. We're going to talk Alabama, LSU. We're going to recap what happened in college football, not just the SEC, guys, but we're going to talk about what happened in college football this weekend because there are so many storylines. But before I bring you guys on the air, the big news today has been that LSU has a few players, maybe more than a couple, but a handful of players with COVID. So we don't really know the status of this game. I mean, it's in jeopardy, but they haven't canceled it yet. Here's what Nick Saban said about Alabama and how they handled their off week, and then we'll kind of talk about things and listen to what Ed Orgeron said. But let's just start with the ball coach himself, Nick Saban.
We'll go with Tony.
Coach, I've got two. First off, do you have an update on Brian Robinson? I know he was a little bit nicked up. And then second of all, what did you address your players in terms of handling the bye week, in terms of safety precautions, and in terms of contracting COVID? Was there any guidelines you passed on to them?
Yeah, B-Rob is fine. So I don't think there's any issues there. Yes, basically, we test our players just every day, as you know. And really the guidelines that we had for our players is, look, our players have been here for a long time and they've been working for a long time. I didn't really want them to go anywhere and leave their bubble, but I didn't have the heart to tell them that they couldn't go home and see their family. So the one place our players were allowed to go was home. And that was it. If you weren't going home, then you needed to stay here and be in your bubble. And the protocol that we took is we had a meeting with every player who was leaving, reinforced social distancing and the things that they needed to do. We gave them a packet of sanitary things that would help them be able to do that, whether it's mask, hand sanitizer, whatever it might be. And then we set up video conferences with each family that they were going to go visit. And we also wanted them to really understand the importance of being able to control, the bubble that the players would be in when they were at home, because players feel comfortable around their family, but you also don't know, where the family members are going, coming and going to. So we really tried to educate the players and their families on what needed to be done, and tried to give them all the things that we could in terms of apparatus, so that they would have the things that they needed to be able to stay safe.
Again, sorry, I guess I was muted. But anyway, Nick Saban made his comments. He and Alabama did a nice job of, just trying to put out the exact way that the players needed to spend the off week. He said, I didn't have the heart to tell them that they could not go see their family. And there's people that probably feel like, well, Nick Saban doesn't have a heart, right? Because, we just say that, but he does. Actually, the guys that have played for him love him, and they love the fact that he does care a ton about them. And Tony Tsoukalas, you're the guy that follows Alabama every day. The Crimson Tide kind of got hit with COVID right at the beginning of camp, so a lot of guys had it. It kind of spread through the facility, and hopefully that's it. LSU kind of dealing with a small outbreak right now, and Nick Saban talking about what it took for them and the way that they laid out everyone being able to go home to see their family during the off week.
Yeah, from an Alabama standpoint, they were really guarded when they came home. They were allowed to meet with family members at home, but everything was, there was a lot of protocols that had to be followed. There was a lot of, Mac Jones talked about where he went home, but he didn't get to hug anyone. And he kind of sat at a different table during dinner. And he was very separated and it was really low key. And he watched a lot of, a football on TV and ate some food. But, there wasn't a lot of interacting with different people because you really can't tell, where your family was this whole time or anything like that. So Alabama was really safe about it. But that might not mean anything if LSU, if their COVID numbers get out of control, because this game, you need two people to tango in this game. And if LSU's hurting for numbers, this game might not happen.
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of puts this one in a different perspective. I mean, LSU's already got a game to make up with Florida, so that open week after Arkansas for Alabama doesn't exist for LSU, right? And this game, I mean, look, when they set up the entire season this year, there were chances where you might be missing some of your best players, and I get it. If you're LSU, you want to have the best players that you have out there. But if it isn't going to affect your ability to field a team and go out and play the game, it might not be the best guys that you have. But I think you still need to go out there and play because, look, I mean, that's the only way we're going to get through this season, Tony.
I agree. I think you got to be safe about it, though. I mean, I think that, if LSU can play, I think, it's obviously we want that to happen. But at the same time, I think, you got to be safe with these players, and they've got to have enough players to play. So it's just it's a complicated situation. I mean, I know we're all rooting for this game to happen, and obviously for Alabama, it'd be a big redemption game too. But when it comes down to it, it's all about the logistics of will there be enough players, and are they taking this? The SEC has been really stringent with their precautions that they've taken. So. It's a waiting game right now. I know the SEC is going to be as safe as possible, but we'll just have to see.
How many players are we talking about here for LSU? Do you know?
Well, there's 4 that have tested positive, but with contact tracing, there's much more that would be ineligible. I believe we don't have an exact number, but the thing that from the report that I saw was 4 plus a good number of other people that would be ineligible as well. And so, I think there's only one quarterback, for example, one scholarship quarterback available for this game. And, LSU's already been hit by transfers and opt-outs. And so their roster's already really small. I think at the point they are now, from what I've read, they'd be able to play. But they're right at that limit. If it gets any worse, you might not be able to play.
Trey, play me that audio of Ed Orgeron on the center of Alabama's field after last year's win over Alabama. Do you have that? Can you pull that up for me?
Oh, we got
With COVID, any potential starters missing for Saturday?
Oh, sure, always, yeah. With the people that are in quarantine and COVID, yeah, there's always going to be starters. Yeah, there's starters involved.
Yeah, that's not the one I was talking about, but yeah, I mean, of course, he's talking about starters. See if we can dig this up, but I want to show you why I feel like if I'm LSU, I'm probably not interested in playing this football game if I can get out of not playing this game. Look, I get it. There's 4 guys that have COVID, but I mean, isn't part of this deal is that you might have to have the backup quarterback play a game because someone has COVID? It's not the guy that has COVID. It's their grandmother or their mom. I mean, look, these guys have a better chance of dying from the flu than dying from COVID. But their grandmother, their mom, anyone over 70 years old, it's totally opposite for them.
I don't necessarily agree. And first of all, we're down to one scholarship quarterback, so they are down to the backup quarterback. If he can't play, then they literally, by SEC rules, can't field a team. And I don't want to get political with it, but it is a serious virus. I don't think we should just ignore it. And, if they have, if they have a concern about it, I think it's right to not play. I think at the same time, I think we're all rooting for it to be the right scenario, right? But I don't think you can make light of this. I think it's a serious situation. If I don't think Alabama wants to go down there if it's not safe for Alabama too. I mean, Alabama's got another season to worry about it. You don't want this to happen to Alabama moving forward, and then they're in a situation like LSU where they can't play games. So,
It's really tough, Mick. I think it's a tough situation. It's not what any of us want. I mean, I think everyone wants to see this game from the beginning of the season. This is probably the game that I would circle. I think it's definitely what the team has circled. But I do think you got to take it seriously. And this one game won't define Alabama's season. And if it has to happen for the greater good of this season, I'd rather Alabama finish the season.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. You're saying, hey, look, you don't want to get more guys on Alabama with COVID, and then all of a sudden, then you can't play the next week, and you can't play the next week, or something like that. All right, look, here's the video.
Right in the middle of the field. Everybody. Hey, we've been waiting for this moment, man. Let's go. Right here in the middle of the damn field. Let's bring it down. Tigers on 3. Hell yeah. Because this is our house from now on. Yes, sir. Tigers on 3. 1, 2, 3.
So you don't think there's a small part of this where you're like, you know what, we got 4 guys with COVID. Who knows the tracing or whatever, but this would be kind of a good game not to play if you're LSU.
I think it would be a bad game for LSU to play just because now they're shorthanded. Like they're already under, what are they, a 24-point favorite? Or Alabama's a 24-point favorite. Now you're taking away some players. I mean, I'm hearing reports that that they don't have tight ends. They don't even have a tight end that's eligible. They don't have a long snapper that's eligible. So I mean, they were already coming into this game. No one thought they were going to win, and now they don't have a tight end. I mean, imagine trying to game plan without a scholarship tight end. So yeah, of course, I would imagine LSU wanting to get out of this game, but I don't necessarily think it's because of that as much as it's because it's almost an unwinnable game. I think if they're missing as many of these people, they were already probably going to lose. Now I don't see it. I don't see how does LSU win. I mean, with a good portion of their team out, and they're already not the better team.
He's Tony Sucos, Trey Yannity. I'm Mick Gillespie. We're talking about Alabama and LSU game kind of up in the air right now because of COVID. This isn't the only game, Tony, that's right on the verge of not being played, I'm guessing, right? Because there's been other games that are even past this, including Auburn. They're not playing this week.
Right. Yeah. Auburn's not. And then I know I need to check on an update with Texas A&M, but I know that they halted their practice today for COVID as well. It's COVID has hit the SEC hard on a Monday. So it's heading the whole conference, and it's kind of an eerie feeling because look at it from LSU standpoint. You get basically one makeup. If LSU can't play Alabama, that game gets canceled probably because LSU's already making up their one COVID reschedule with Florida. And so it's like you get one, mess up with COVID, one game that gets canceled. And then after that, you start losing games. And it's kind of a scary time when you look at the future because it can happen any week. And I just really hope that this gets under control and enough teams and we can make this season work. I don't think it's time to necessarily panic, but it is certainly a little concerning when you look at a team like LSU and you look at the thought of maybe possibly not having LSU versus Alabama, which is one of my favorite games of the season. And to not have that would be really, I don't know, it'd just be a gut punch for me. And I know it'd be a gut punch for both fans on either side of the rivalry.
Right. And one of the makeup weeks was last week. We didn't have any games, right? We were on a bye. And so now we're kind of past that point. And since, Florida had the COVID issues when they were supposed to play LSU, obviously they're in this situation right now. All right, we'll see what happens there. I still got my fingers crossed that they'll play this football game. Honestly, Tony and Trey, I don't think that it would have mattered if LSU had their starting quarterback, if they had, the backup quarterback, if they had the tight ends or not. I think Alabama was going to go in there like a freight train. And, it's just the way that the COVID world is. Like some people are going to be out, some people are going to be in. That's the only way you can get the season gone. Like Major League Baseball did it. Some of the best players in baseball were out a little bit. They came back. So it's unfortunate. The most important thing is that if they have COVID, it's probably not going to affect them that much, but it could affect their mom, their grandmom, someone else. Just got to kind of stay contained and not spread that around. But that's the off week too. Both of these teams were off. And you heard from Nick Saban at the beginning of the show. It's like, being social distancing and paying attention and being vigilant, like it's an easy virus to catch. I had it. I survived it. Look, I'm sitting here right now. It didn't bother me. My wife had a tough time with it, so it's different people have different issues with it. But it is a real deal, like you said before. I definitely agree with that. All right, let's talk about the action that we saw this past weekend. And I want to start with Notre Dame and Clemson, because after the game, Notre Dame's fans ran out on the field, Tony. They were not social distancing. Trey, you're a student. You see that. At Alabama, we don't run out on the field when we win any game. Notre Dame kind of used to be one of those programs, but, now, they beat Clemson. They beat number one. It hasn't happened in like 15 years. Start with you, Trey. Your thoughts on that win for Notre Dame and kind of what it means in the college football landscape.
Yeah, just talking post-game to start here, I don't think it could happen at Alabama just because the field's about 50 feet away from the student section there, but it wouldn't either way. This is a traditional program. The fans act classy every time, and Notre Dame's the same way. But this is a win that I think excites you enough, for that reaction. This is the number one team in the country. A lot of people, us included, we sat here on Thursday night and ripped Notre Dame to shreds and said they had no chance. This is a great win, and I want to backpedal a little bit on that as well. I think some people were coming at me on social media, this, that, whatever. I never allowed Notre Dame to have a chance in this game. But I have a long history with Clemson, and they let me down a whole lot of times in the past. And since I've shifted from their fandom, they've started to let me down in other ways. So I didn't have much faith in the Fighting Irish, but a great win. Ian Book, I think, doesn't get enough credit. He's had a very up and down season. Their defense has been excellent all year. They looked a little shaky at times on Saturday, but you got to tip your hat to DJ Uiagalelei. I think that's it there. And
it sounded right to me.
Yeah.
Did it sound right to you, Tony? Ukulele?
No, I can't say it.
Uiagalelei? Is that it?
I don't know. Look, I was just going to say ukulele. I don't know. Look, it sounded close enough to me.
Oh yeah,
I'll tell you what, the kid did a good job. Clemson didn't lose because of the quarterback.
No, that's the thing. You look at this game, the final score is 47-40. This wasn't a 13-10 game. The offense provided more than they needed. DJ had, 2 TDs in the air, 1 on the ground, threw for 460-something yards. The dude was unreal. Their offense looked great. This was not a Trevor Lawrence thing. This was not a Trevor Lawrence problem. Notre Dame had the lead before Trevor Lawrence would have even had the chance to step onto the field in this game. I think you got to tip your hat to Notre Dame. But at the end of the day, Clemson's going to get another chance in the ACC title. They will play again. They're doing the top 2 this year. It's going to be those 2. So I don't think if you're a Clemson fan, you write yourselves off by any means. But you're going to get your chance at revenge. So tip your hat to Notre Dame and move on. But
look, Notre Dame played the best game that they're going to play against Clemson. Clemson's become, Alabama. I want to say part 2, but they're just kind of the same way. Like, you have to play a hell of a game to beat Alabama, and that's what Clemson. Clemson didn't go in there and embarrass themselves. Notre Dame just played a great game, Tony. And watching that game, I was impressed with what Notre Dame was able to do. That's one of the biggest wins they've had in years.
I was really impressed with what Notre Dame did. Look, they beat Clemson. I don't care if Trevor Lawrence is in that game. I think it's a similar result because you look at the quarterback play from Clemson and it was great. So I personally think that Notre Dame beat I think if Notre Dame played that way against with Trevor Lawrence in the game, I still think they probably put themselves in a similar position to grab a win. That has to give them a lot of confidence moving forward. Because they're going to probably meet again in the ACC championship game. And now you really can't count Notre Dame out of that game because they've proven it. They've shown it. It's going to be harder to beat them in the ACC title game. Sure. But I think, we have to now consider Notre Dame a little bit of a contender. And I think we also have to look at Clemson in a slightly, different light. I think Clemson's still a contender, but they're beatable now. And I think, that's an encouraging sign for Alabama because at times it didn't really look like Clemson was beatable. Now they've had 2 straight weeks where I honestly don't think it was the quarterback's fault in either weeks, the way it was close. I'm not going to try to say this guy's name, but he's been great, and he's playing like a pro quarterback right now. He's putting up great numbers. So, I was in short, I was really impressed with Notre Dame. I didn't think I was going to be, and it turns out, they proved me wrong too.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was absolutely impressed with Notre Dame. And Clemson too. I mean, like Clemson's become that team that like Alabama. Alabama's not going to win every game, but when they lose, normally it's just a really really good game. And Clemson lost, but Notre Dame did a lot of things right in that football game. It was probably the game of the year so far. So give them credit. But the problem that Notre Dame has is that for them to get to the college football playoff, they're going to have to beat Clemson again. I don't see that happening with Trevor Lawrence, but it also opened the door for Alabama to become the number one team in the country, Tony.
Yeah, they are, and that's a whole nother distraction. I don't think Nick Saban's too happy about that. He mentioned in his press conference that it's insignificant, especially in this year when not everyone's played the same amount of games. Can you judge Ohio State the same way you can judge Alabama? Look, it's going to end up helping Alabama if they can stay number one, because it means that, if they're number one in the college football playoff, they'll get to play in New Orleans instead of traveling all the way out to Pasadena. But I think in terms of, is it going to matter moving, over the next couple of weeks? No, it doesn't matter. It's trivial when you look at, Alabama's been here. They've done it. They're used to being number one. I don't think it's really going to make a difference either way.
Right. And Trey, Nick Saban, I think he likes being number two better than being number one, just because he can motivate the guys that people don't have respect for Alabama.
Oh, definitely. I mean, if you look at last Saturday after that Clemson Boston College game, when Clemson was on the ropes the entire time, everybody on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Alabama should be the number one team in the country right now after the way they've played, the wins they have, the wins that Clemson has, and, that BC game. Alabama probably deserved to be number one, but I can promise you Nick Saban was the last guy in the world that wanted that team to be atop the ranks. And, the AP poll, any way you draw it, if you're number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's the Associated Press poll. It's dated now. It really means nothing other than just kind of, a place mark of where you're at and compared to everybody else, because the college football playoff poll is going to come out and then everybody's, it's going to be a whole new controversy, this, that, whatever. Alabama deserved to be the number one team coming into this week. I think this weekend, just signifies that. And I don't think these players buy into the rat poison. But, I can agree with you there. I think they would have liked to stay at maybe number 2 or 3.
Yeah. Well,
up until the end, at least.
Until the end, yes.
But I think that being number one going into the college football playoff is important, because Clemson, they play that weak, soft schedule in the ACC. They're number one. Your first round games against like a Notre Dame, and Alabama's playing Oklahoma. I mean, the difference in athletes, in the past has been, you're going to play a very physical game if you're Alabama, and if you're Clemson, you're going to be up by 30 early, and you're going to be able to rest everyone and going into that final game. So I think being number one is important. I think Alabama's the best team in the country, and as I kind of read the comments that you guys are throwing out at us on here, I do think Alabama's the number one team in the country. I think they're the best team in the country. I think they have a well-balanced attack. Obviously, when they played against Ole Miss, there's some problems in the defense, but they're getting better and better each week, so that's exciting. Let's talk about the SEC, because that's what we do on Monday Night Quarterback, right, guys? I mean, unless you guys – did either of you guys see the BYU-Boise State game?
No, I heard the score.
Tony?
I didn't, but I saw how Zach Martin continued to ball out, and I'm keeping him, as crazy as it sounds, as a dark horse for the Heisman. He's a guy that, look at it, this guy's a touchdown machine. I think he's going to need some players above him, and I wrote about this on the site. He's going to need some players above him to maybe slip up some. I think it usually goes to a Power 5, quarterback, but if he stays in there, if he keeps BYU in it, you can't count him out.
Yeah. Well, look, man, the guy can play. They're a good football team, and of the mid majors or whatever you want to call them, independents, they're dangerous. I don't think they're going to get a chance. But the way that they dismantled Boise State, I don't remember the last time Boise State got beat like that. All right, let's talk SEC football. And we're going to look around a very limited slate of action in the conference. And I'm going to start with a game that you guys probably aren't even going to want to talk about. But Mississippi State beat Vandy 24-17. The Commodores are now 0-5. Mississippi State 2-4. It was a game where State had a big lead. Vandy came back. I don't know that Vandy's going to win this year. I think that Mike Leach really needed this win, Tony.
I think so too. Alabama was the first time he's ever been shut out. So I mean, he needed a bounce back win. It had really gone downhill for him since that LSU win. So you're right, it is Vandy, but I do think that you need to get the momentum started somewhere, and I think that's big for him.
What about you, Trey? You look like a very studious guy. Why didn't you go to Nashville for school to Vandy and then you watch this game?
Man,
You look at, seriously though. You look at this. Mississippi State's got to beat Vandy, and this is an 0-10 season for the Commodores.
Yeah, I mean, this game, is a really weird one because Mississippi State took a 14-0 lead, and they were kind of rolling, and they let that slip. It was a little back and forth. I think you almost and a win is a win, and you got to feel good if you're the Bulldogs moving forward with a win, but you almost feel a little bit worse. This is a terrible Vanderbilt team, and you had a lead on them early in this game. Could have put them away. You didn't. I get it. You're coming off of the Bama game. You're coming off of a terrible loss that you got shut out in. Good to just get a win. But this is still a very flawed team, and they showed that again on Saturday. A lot has to change, and it comes down to, I think, opt-outs and other things happening that is a little bit out of their control, and just not having the recruits right now with the coaching situation the way it's been. But something's got to change. It's obviously probably not going to happen for Vanderbilt anytime soon. They're going to lose all 10 games this year, I believe. But, for Mississippi State, this is a team that we talked about at the beginning of the season as, maybe a sleeper pick. You look at the offense, you look at, the combination of Costello and Leach, and, the receiving core looked to be all right. But this team is falling way off. I think they're probably, I'm going to say, maybe the 13th best team in this conference right now. It's a bad Mississippi State team.
Yeah, with a new coach, Mike Leach. Look, I want to say this to everyone watching right now. We really appreciate you being here for Monday Night Quarterback. Love having you guys around. Love keeping up with what you're doing on the message board. Look, this is what this show's all about. Get on here, cut up, make criticisms, say what you like. That's what we're doing on here. We're just throwing out stuff and seeing if it sticks on the wall. Give us the thumbs up. We really appreciate that. It means a lot to us. Also, subscribe to the channel. You don't just have to be an Alabama fan, a grad like me. And look, I'm telling you, I'm definitely tilted to the Alabama side of things, but I try to be optimistic. I try to be objective. I try to be fair, all those things. But Trey's a student at Alabama. You're not going to convince him to be objective. I mean, look, he's going to school there every day. And then Tony's our beat writer. He's very objective. That's what his job is. But no matter what, we appreciate you guys being here with us tonight. Give us the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And also maybe schedule us because we're going to be on every Monday night. Try to be here around 6 o'clock on the Bama Insider YouTube channels. All right. Look, we talked about the worst game that really had no significance other than maybe Vandy doesn't win. Texas A&M's ranked 7th. They're laying in the weeds. That's an expression my grandfather used to use a lot. Laying in the weeds, They beat South Carolina 48-3. This is a South Carolina team that beat Auburn. All of a sudden, Tony, Texas A&M's 5-1. Their only losses to Alabama. They got this team. Kellen Mond's their quarterback, as you see on the screen right now. A lot of people are saying maybe they're the 4th team into the college football playoff. Just a really good win for them over South Carolina.
Look, they need a lot of things to happen for that to happen, but it's still a possibility. That's something we've been talking about on Monday Night Quarterback, all year. We've been talking about how A&M could sneak into the playoff, and they're just sticking around, and they're becoming, I think one of the better teams in the SEC. I think, where would you put them in the SEC? Probably 4th right now. Maybe actually, you know what? I think you might put them above Georgia, so maybe 3rd. In terms of your power rankings. I think you go Alabama, Florida, maybe Texas A&M, then Georgia. Certainly because Georgia's offense can't move the ball. So A&M's a good team, and I'm telling you what, if they win out the rest of their games, they might be in a sitting pretty position when it comes down to kind of waiting and hoping of what the college football playoff committee is going to do. They don't obviously really control their own destiny because they're not going to get another shot at Alabama, and that really hurts. But when you look at it from their standpoint, it could be definitely worse. I have them winning the remainder of their games. and then it just could be really interesting.
What about you, Trey?
Yeah, I think Notre Dame winning this game on Saturday was the worst thing that ever could happen to Texas A&M, because before that happened, their path was unbelievably clear. I mean, I'm not going to say a lock for any team that has a loss at this point in the season, not going to play their conference title game, but they were in incredible position. After Oklahoma State lost, they came into this weekend 5, and it seemed that Clemson would win that game. So then you start talking about scenarios. If Notre Dame loses, they're out. They'll probably play Clemson again and lose with Trevor Lawrence, everything else. So double out. It was going to come down to Georgia, Bama. If Georgia had beat Florida, Texas A&M also needed that to happen. Which really, that one doesn't matter as much, because if Bama beats Florida, Florida's knocked out. So that would open up the spot for Texas A&M. But now it's looking like it's almost going to be Clemson, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Alabama, no questions asked. Because we saw what happened on Saturday, but I think Clemson's going to win that second game against Notre Dame, and then you have to keep both of them in there. And Ohio State and Alabama will be undefeated, hopefully, at that point. So you got to put those two in. Before this weekend, I would have said that A&M was definitely penciled in some darker lead there in my playoff bracket. But after this, it's hard. They played a great game. They dominated South Carolina, but their chances are definitely getting a little bit bleak, because you even got schools like Oregon now that's a very dicey conversation and a weird scenario. If they do go undefeated, what do you do with the Oregon Ducks? But they even probably have a little bit more of an argument than Texas A&M would at this point. What do you think, Mick?
Look, man, I totally disagree. I think Texas A&M's in the best spot they could possibly be in. They don't have to go to Atlanta. Kellen Mond's starting to come into his own. He had 4 touchdowns this weekend against South Carolina. Isaiah Spiller had 131 total yards. You know what? They when you look back at the Alabama game, they did some things right. They played some good football, but if they win out and they're 9-1 and they're sitting out there, a couple things happen. Like a couple of losses here, or a couple upsets there, and I think that they end up sliding in. I've seen Alabama do it in the past. They're a dangerous football team, and then they beat Florida. And after watching Florida and Georgia, which we're going to talk about, not yet, but we're going to get into that on the show, that shows you how important that win is. So, I mean, there's the top 4, the top 5 standings. I totally disagree with the coaches poll. Texas A&M should be ranked 5th, and Florida should be ranked 6th, because in the head-to-head matchup, they won the football game. But they're both right at the same exact spot, Tony. They're both really good teams with great offenses. They play football the way that everyone kind of, plays football right now. And to me, Texas A&M should be getting more respect than Florida. Although Florida's got a chance to play for the SEC title, so if they beat Alabama, obviously they're going to shoot by everybody, in the SEC and get into the playoff if they don't lose another game. But Texas A&M in the AP top 25, unlike the coaches poll, is 5th. I mean, you're just waiting for one more upset.
And one thing about this Notre Dame team, they looked great against Clemson, right? But they won a 12-7 game against Louisville. So it's not guaranteed that they won't get upset. I'm looking at their schedule. They've got a Boston College team who gave Clemson a hard time. They've got UNC, Syracuse, and Wake Forest. They should win all those games. But if they get upset, then if Clemson beats them in the ACC title game, I think that opens up that path again for Texas A&M. I do agree with Trey, though, that from a Texas A&M standpoint, I think, obviously they were rooting for Clemson. I think they didn't want the waters to be really muddied there. But who knows?
Yeah. Sorry, Nick.
No, go ahead, Trey. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, looking at this now, even and looking at Notre Dame's schedule, it's a good point, because it's like, this team did. It's so easy to be high on them right now, but this team did. I don't remember that Georgia Tech final was. I don't know if you still have it up, Tony, but they struggled in that game too. This is a team that could definitely lose another game, and I think that opens it up. But there's a few scenarios. What do you guys think about Cincinnati, though? They're kind of hanging around.
Man, I don't know. I don't buy them. Let me tell you guys something. As an Irish Catholic guy, and I got my Alabama degree on the wall behind me. I'm not going to bore you guys with looking at it, but I did graduate from Alabama. And when I showed up to campus, that was when I stopped being a Notre Dame fan. So I know about the heartache of Notre Dame. Like, that Notre Dame wins the big game, right? And then the next week they lose to Boston College. That's what happened last time they beat number one, right? Rocket Ishmael and then Quadri Ishmael. I mean, I love Notre Dame back as a kid, and all those teams. They will let you down. So, I'm watching them beat Clemson, which I thought they played one, just heck of a football game. I thought they did everything right, and they played one of the best games you could possibly play. And then I'm looking and I'm going, all right, there's Boston College on the schedule. They're going to go to BC and lose. They're going to lose to North Carolina. That's the tough part, not just for Notre Dame. That's the tough part for a lot of favorites. Being able to come back the next week and play great. And that's why Nick Saban is the GOAT, because that just doesn't happen to Alabama. The teams that beat Alabama beat them because they do a great job on the football field. I don't sound like a Clemson guy, Cam Best, but I'm going to tell you something right now. I look like a Clemson guy? No, I graduated from Alabama. But what I'm going to tell you is that Notre Dame, if they're going to be in the same conversation as Clemson and Alabama, I can't even put Ohio State in this. You can't lose those games to Boston College and North Carolina, whoever. And there's a chance that they will.
Yeah, the ACC in general is weird right now. One thing I also want to talk about with you guys tonight, I had this conversation with my dad last night. What if Notre Dame was in the ACC every single year? What if Clemson had to play a few of these games every year? How would that change the landscape of college football? That question, that conversation is starting to become kind of realistic. Dabo said today he would love it. I don't think he would. I don't think he would want that every season. I think that something like that would really change the dynamic of, even college football as a whole.
It's kind of a bad look for the ACC if they allow Notre Dame in for one season and then Notre Dame wins the ACC in that season. It's kind of like, could anybody win the ACC? Is just like letting guests in and they'll win the ACC. I mean, look, if you let, I'm trying to think, I don't know, let's just say you let Texas into the SEC for 1 year and they win the SEC, that kind of hits the SEC's credibility. It's like, well, geez, maybe we're not that good if another team can come in and win, our conference first year.
Look, man, I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, Trey, you know me. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to shoot you straight. Tony, the same thing. The only reason Notre Dame won is because Trevor Lawrence was on the sideline.
That's not true. No way.
Listen, I'm telling you, Trevor Lawrence is not losing to Notre Dame. And I'm so confident, Tony, that I hope that they rematch again just so that we can make a friendly bet over City Cafe. Do you like City Cafe in Tuscaloosa?
Everyone likes City Cafe.
Okay,
Nick, but
City Cafe bet Clemson will beat Notre Dame. They'll cover the spread next time they play with Trevor Lawrence. You throw it right now.
Well, here's the thing. I think that Clemson
just give me the pinky right now.
I think that Clemson could.
You don't want to do it.
I think that Clemson could win the game, but it's the reason why they lost was not because of Trevor Lawrence not being there. Look at the stats.
But Trevor Lawrence makes the plays, man. I mean, Trevor Lawrence makes the play. I mean, I'm not saying it was the quarterback spot. I'm saying he is one of the 5 best players in college football. He's a difference maker. The young kid with the tough last name to pronounce is great, and he's going to be an awesome player. But Trevor Lawrence is a champion.
439 yards.
2 TDs. He had a 53-yard pass. He got sacked twice, a 90 QBR. He played incredibly. And I know what you're saying, Mick. I know that's not your argument. Trevor Lawrence is a difference maker. And if you have that kid,
he's a beast, man.
Yeah, no doubt. But if your team allows 47 points
no one plays defense, Trey. No one plays defense. Alabama doesn't play defense. Georgia plays defense, and they stink. You don't play defense anymore. You just get out there and this is it's a little bit better than flag football. The way that college football has progressed now, and it's honestly it's like that in the NFL too. It's an offensive game. So you've got to score points. It's a track meet.
Mick, if you're going to blame the loss on anyone, look at Travis Etienne stats. 18 carries for 28 yards, 1.6 yards per carry. I know he had some receptions, but, that's really what let Clemson down. I think if Clemson's going to come back and beat Notre Dame, it's going to be because Travis Etienne had a much better game. I think he lost that. I think he was always a Heisman dark horse, but I think when you look at Travis Etienne, he pretty much wrote himself out of the Heisman after that game.
I agree. Look, he didn't have his Heisman moment.
No.
We talk about that a lot. Look, as you guys watch this show, or if you listen on our podcast, the Bama Insider podcast on Apple or Spotify, or you're watching on YouTube right now, hey, do us a favor. Give us a thumbs up. Like the show. We're going to get in here in the mosh pit. We're going to battle for you guys. Love your comments. Subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot to us. This is Monday Night Quarterback. This is what we do, man. We talk football. We're going to go through the SEC. We're going to update Alabama. And we're going to do it every Monday night at 6 o'clock. He's Tony Sukalis. You've read his work on BamaInsider.com. The guy's an awesome beat writer. Trey Yanity is our producer. I'm Mick Gillespie. Kyle is on here with us some. Kyle's on assignment tonight. We got different people that pop in on the show, but this is what this is all about. This is the mosh pit of college football Monday night. All right, guys, moshing in the pit now as we stay in the SEC is a game that you're going to say, okay, this one's kind of boring to me. First half, Tennessee 13, Arkansas nothing. Third quarter, Arkansas 24, Tennessee nothing. Final score 24-13. Look, Coach Pittman at Arkansas has that team 3-3. Tony, they're 3-3. Like, I didn't think they would win. I thought that it would be them and Vanderbilt going big goose egg in the conference. And I want to start with them, and then I want to get into Tennessee. But what a job that Arkansas has done to be at this point right now where they're 3-3 in an all-conference schedule, as terrible as they've been in the last few years.
Yeah, Sam Pittman's a great coach, man. That's what it is. He's doing a great job. Who would have thought? I think none of us thought that Arkansas was going to win a game, and now they have a chance to go. They could go 500. I mean, they're winning games. I mean, every win for Arkansas to me is just like gravy. I think it's you look at it and you think, wow, it's one more win that you thought they were going to get. Who would have thought that between Lane Kiffin and Leach and that Pittman was actually the best hire? Because I think between Lane Kiffin, Mike Leach, and Sam Pittman, I'm going towards Pittman as the guy that's winning my hire of the year.
Trey?
I mean, this program, I think it's more on Tennessee. This game was more on Tennessee than Arkansas, but I'm so on this bandwagon now, guys. I think Arkansas coming into this season, they might have been expected to have one of the worst seasons in SEC history. They hadn't won a conference game since 2017, 2016. So for them to just come out and even look the way they did in week one and kind of have the Auburn game happen and some other stuff. And just, it's such a resilient group. And I think it's, that because there's so many resilient guys in that team. There's, maybe some guys that like Felipe Franks, he lost his job at Florida, comes there with a chip on his shoulder and is playing lights out. Pittman's done an unbelievable job. I'm with you, Tony, on the coach of the year. This team is, is headed in the completely right direction. You look at a team at Tennessee that they've almost traded places as the season has gone on. Tennessee was, I think, I don't know about you guys, I thought they were going to end up in the top 15 maybe. This team was winning games. They were looking good. And, all of a sudden that turned around very fast for them. And, Arkansas on the flip side of that, they were playing well early on. They lost to Georgia, whatever. But they're winning games now. This team's looking good. That's a team, they're usually at plus odds. We'll talk about our locks of the week and do our gambling later on in the week. But you know what, man? This team is almost becoming a lock.
Yeah, look, man. Yeah, look, when I saw like that first game where they were giving Georgia trouble, I'm like, Georgia stinks, I'm like they've got problems, and they do have problems, but what I didn't realize is that Arkansas is not bad, like, are they good? No, but they're not bad. They're in the middle somewhere, but they're better than Tennessee, and that really surprises me. Tennessee played an excellent first half. I watched the game. Garantano, their quarterback, their senior, like this guy's been there for like 15 years. They didn't take advantage of all the opportunities that they had in the game, but they were up 13-0. And then in the second half, Tennessee just could not do anything right. And then all of a sudden we had a carousel of quarterbacks. We had the second string guy in there, Maurer. Then we had the freshman 5-star kid come in, and then and before you knew it, it was over, right? And kind of flipping the coin, after praising Arkansas, that really didn't have many expectations. But look, you got to give them credit because they have done so well this year. I thought Tennessee was going to be good. I'm going to tell you, man, like I'm not afraid to admit it. Like I was absolutely wrong. I thought, okay, Tennessee has this big offensive line. They got the kid from Georgia that transferred in, a 5-star, to play with Trey Smith, another 5-star on their offensive line. Like they've recruited better. They're in the top 20 in recruiting. I felt like Pruitt was doing a good job of getting this team tough. And then, like, in the middle of nowhere, like, he fires a coach according to some reports during the Kentucky game. Since some people say after the game, it doesn't matter. He fired a coach right in the middle of the season. So now all of a sudden you have just, like, thrown out the continuity that you have in your coaching staff. And then since then, it's like they were leading, by the way, guys, Georgia going into the second half, and they got boat raced. Then they got beaten by Kentucky, who they really never lose to. And the Indians get beaten. They got destroyed. And then they played Alabama, and Alabama stuffed them for the 14th straight year. Then they play Arkansas after a week off, and then that's the game that we watched on Saturday. And I'm having to admit, like, this team stinks. And I'm wondering, too, if it's not better for them, even though they just extended Jeremy Pruitt's contract, to go ahead and pay that off and go get Hugh Freeze, Tony.
I think there's a lot of teams that could benefit from having Hugh Freeze. I mean, look, you say that with Tennessee. I think Michigan might be in that same category, but I agree. At a certain point, you have to stop keeping this carousel of coaching. You might want to just sit up with one guy and maybe let him develop, but I don't know if Jeremy Pruitt's the guy. It doesn't seem like he's got the right momentum, and I think you'd want to be trending the other way by now. It just seems like every 3 years we have another Tennessee coach on the hot seat, and that's not a formula for success. At some point, you got to stick with a guy. But look, if Hugh Freeze is out there, look what he's doing with Liberty. Man, that'd be tough. I think I might bite on that as well. Assuming the SEC lets Hugh Freeze come back, right?
Well, I don't know how they couldn't. I mean, Tony, they had him lined up to be Alabama's offensive coordinator. Can you imagine Hugh Freeze like coaching Alabama's offense? And then
I don't know. Well, Sarkisian's done a great job,
and he's done a great job too, right? But look at Liberty. Like, they didn't have a football team 4 years ago. They go to Virginia Tech on Saturday and they beat the Hokies, which was it's just absolutely phenomenal. I know, Trey, I'm going to let you get in on this in a second, but just to follow up, Tony, Hugh Freeze, like, the guy's for real. Like, how often, like, what he did at Ole Miss to get himself in trouble, I think it happens a lot more than people want to admit. Sorry,
we were talking about Hugh Freeze, and I think when you were talking about Liberty, I think we all wrote him off in that game. I don't think anyone really thought he had a chance of beating Virginia Tech, and then he goes and does it. I mean, look, he has Liberty ranked in the top 25. That is ridiculous. That big prep, big kudos to him for doing that. He's the real deal offensively. He's I think Steve Sarkisian's doing a hell of a job at Alabama, but I think Hugh Freeze would have also done a really good job at Alabama as well. So I think he's going to make a great head coach. Obviously, look what he had done with Ole Miss. They were, he really took them to a new level that they had never been before, or at least for a long time. So I definitely think a team's going to come. Will it be an SEC team? I don't know, but I think it's his days at Liberty have to be short-lived, right?
Yeah. Look, Trey, you're a college guy. You're learning about money right now. $2 million is great, but when you can make $5 million, right, or $6 million.
Yeah, I'm learning about how to spend money right now. Trying to save. It's hard out here right now, guys. But no, this is I think this makes all the sense in the world. And if you look at Tennessee's program too, this is tough because Jeremy Pruitt has been starting to get some classes. They're starting to get some real momentum going on the recruiting side of things. And coming into this year, you thought maybe we have a different Guarantano. Maybe this line shows up, and it hasn't. They've been terrible, and there's only one clear answer. It's Jeremy Pruitt has to go. I get it. I think Hugh Freeze would be a good hire there. And, right now there's not too many other guys I would even think of. I feel like that name, obviously the big win this weekend, everything else, but that name would be perfect for a team like Tennessee that needs to figure out how to get this offense going. And I would love to see Hugh Freeze there somewhere. Liberty's a great fit, but it would be cool to see him back in the Power 5 doing his thing. I think Tennessee would be right.
The thing about Hugh Freeze, though, is at Liberty, there's not the pressure that you're dealing with in the SEC. I mean, look at Jeremy Pruitt. He goes to Tennessee. The program's been decimated. It's a great city. Love going to a football game at Neyland Stadium. Been to a ton of them. I talk about it. I've been to every Alabama-Tennessee game. I think I've been to 19 of the last 20, and I've been to the last 16 or 17 in a row. I'm an old man now, I guess, because I love the game. I love smoking my cigars after it, but I appreciate the rivalry and I have a lot of respect for Tennessee's tradition, Jeremy Pruitt, it's just it's too slow of a process, man. Fans are getting frustrated, that you want to win games against Arkansas and you want to compete against Alabama and Florida and Georgia, and Tennessee's not there yet. And, you're wondering, when that's going to happen, but I guess that's kind of the question on this. But watching Tennessee just year after year, as one of the bottom feeders in the SEC is puzzling to me because they have the resources. It's not like going to Starkville. It's not like going to Vandy, where no one shows up to the game. This is a place where people love football, and you would expect them to be better, but it just hasn't been the case. All right, guys, look. We have just kept talking and talking, so I've kind of got to get to the end of the show, but we're not there yet. And that's because we got to talk about the biggest game in the SEC, the one that impacts Alabama the most, and that was number 8 Florida. Absolutely embarrassing number 5 Georgia, 44-28. Look, I was going to do everyone a favor. Trey, you know this. On the tailgate show, every Friday night we pick games. I'm 16-4 on the show, so I thought I would do everyone a favor and I would give my picks. I went 0 on the 3 picks I put. Man, that does not go against my total, by the way.
Oh, my goodness.
But I went 0 for the weekend, and I had a 9-game winning streak going, and I thought for sure that Georgia was gonna smother Florida's defense. That I thought that Stetson Bennett was going to be able to kind of, pick them apart a little bit. They were going to methodically beat the Gators. And all I saw was 2 halves of the same Georgia team that played the second half against Alabama. This team, they're no good as far as being in the next level of teams. They're not a college football playoff team. They're not going to make the SEC championship game, and it's a disappointment because they've got so many great players, Tony. You look at all the 5 stars and the 4 stars that they have on that roster, but they don't have a quarterback that's good enough. And I felt like Saturday in Jacksonville, Florida, that the Gators established that Dan Mullen, Mr. Darth Vader, and the Gators are the team to beat in the East.
I definitely think that, when you look at Georgia, they don't have the firepower. They don't have the firepower to beat a team like Alabama. Defense doesn't win championships anymore in college football. We've learned that this year. And when you look at Florida, they have the firepower. And Kyle Trask, he's great. He might have jumped into, a leading contention for the Heisman after this game. He almost had 500 yards against the Georgia defense. And I still think Georgia has a good defense, even though they've been kind of exposed against Alabama and Florida. I think, against most teams, they've got a respectable defense, but they don't have that offensive firepower. And I'm really interested to see if Florida can kind of match Alabama, because when you look at that offense, it's there. As I don't see Stetson Bennett beating an Alabama team, but when you look at Florida and the weapons they have, it could be a different story. And I think it's going to be an interesting game in Atlanta come December.
Trey?
Yeah, if you're an Alabama fan, I think you definitely wanted Georgia to win this game. You already know you can beat Georgia handily even. That offense is so flawed, and their defense at times, too, has looked terrible. But they just can't move the football. It's about this offense. And if you're Kirby Smart, how can you sit there into that second half, and whenever it was, and not put in Jawan Mathis earlier? It's obviously not working out for Stetson Bennett. You give this kid a million chances, and it just wasn't hhappening. I know they had a 14-0 lead, but they went down quick, and he was looking terrible. And they still waited as long as they did to put in Jawan Mathis. they were outplayed, but they were outcoached in this game first and foremost. And Florida took advantage of that. This team knows how to score a lot of points. Their defense is not very good, but the formula is obvious. If you can put pressure on Stetson Bennett, he will make mistakes. He'll give you the football. He'll allow you to score points. With just dumb stuff he does when he has the football. So if I'm Kirby Smart, I'm taking him out much earlier in this game. I think they were outcoached, and that's the reason they lost. But they were outplayed as well. This Florida team is good, and they have a lot of tools.
Yeah, and then it looks like it'd be Alabama and Florida and Atlanta. I mean, it's still a lot of football to be played, but I don't see Alabama not, getting to Atlanta. And, I talked about this yesterday, on some of the shows that I did here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. And before I get into anything else and we wrap things up, guys, I want to remind all of you how much we appreciate you. We appreciate you whether you're an Alabama fan, whether you're a college football fan, whether you're an LSU fan or a Georgia fan. Whatever reason you're here right now, thanks for being with us tonight for Monday Night Quarterback. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We're going to talk college football. It's going to be, intense. We're going to duke it out for an hour, and then we're going to let you guys do the same thing on the message board. But we really appreciate you guys being part of our show. Look, what happened is that Georgia's setting up. Florida's setting up another matchup with Alabama in the SEC title game. And since this thing started in 1992 when it was Steve Spurrier against Gene Stallings and Alabama won in Birmingham, this has been the most played matchup in SEC title game history. And it's weird kind of seeing Florida back again. And this time with Dan Mullen. And, I mean, Dan Mullen and this team that he's put together could give Alabama trouble, Tony, because of the fact that they can throw the football and they can move the ball. They got the best tight end in football right now. I mean, they've got Travis Kelce, in college, catching passes for him, man. And then Trask, he's able to read defenses. I can't imagine how many points would be scored when we see these two teams. And I'm going to say it right now, Rat Poison, we're going to see these two teams in Atlanta. But this is exciting because both of these programs are really good right now.
Yeah, and you talk about Kyle Pitts, the tight end for Florida. Look, what is the one thing that Alabama really struggled with early in the season? Guarding tight ends. That's a dangerous mix, and maybe Alabama's kind of figured that out, but I think Kyle Pitts can be a real problem. I don't really know who you put against him. He's a real matchup nightmare, and that's going to be a handful for Alabama during that game. I do think they'll be able to score on Florida's defense, and I think it's going to be, like you said, a real just kind of shootout kind of game. I still really like Alabama's offense. I like Alabama's offense more than I like Florida's offense. So this might just be, a 45-40 kind of game, but it's going to be close and it's going to be exciting. I'd be surprised if we were watching this game and we didn't get a classic type of game between these two teams.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the other thing that came out of it, too, is that, Georgia's got problems right now keeping quarterbacks on that roster. They had Justin Fields. They've had other guys that have come and gone. And, for them, if they're going to win national championships, the way that college football is right now, you got to have dynamic quarterbacks. You got to have Tua Tagovailoa. You got to have Mac Jones. You got to have Trevor Lawrence and guys like that. And you're not going to win a championship with Stetson Bennett. I'm sorry to say that, and I respect the kid because I think he's a baller. I mean, he's a tough guy, but he's not going to win a national championship. Guys, I've had such a good time talking. Before we close up the show, I'm going to start with you, Trey. Then I'm going to go to you, Tony, after that. What do you got going on this week? Where can we see you?
Yeah, this is a big week. These last few weeks have been a blessing. It's been super busy. Work's coming back and everything. Yesterday, we recorded a podcast with a guy named Anthony Alford. You can find that on my Twitter at Trey Yanity. It's Pittsburgh Pirates stuff, but we're doing a lot of that right now. A lot of Bama coverage going on too. We got all kinds of articles from Tony. These guys coming out on our website. We're in the full swing of things. This is my favorite time of the year because it's a lot of work. It's hard work, but it's a lot of fun, and just getting to talk about football with you guys and everybody else is such a blast. What do you got going on, Tony?
Yeah, I'm going to be praying to the football gods that this game actually happens so that I can get that trip down to Baton Rouge. I think we're all doing some of that. So I'm going to spend a lot of my time praying for that game. And then other than that, I'm going to keep the normal game coverage. We'll keep it, we'll keep it locked on at Bama Insider, and we'll have wall-to-wall coverage of this game and everything you need to know. 5 questions, breakdowns. I'll have a feature. We'll keep you covered over here. And then Andrew Bone's not here, but stay tuned for him because he's going to have a lot of really good recruiting coverage throughout the week as well. So like always, we'll keep it busy.
Yeah, guys, look, I got a couple things I want to tell you about, too, before we bid you farewell. First off, I got a new podcast with Max Howe, former recruiting coordinator at Florida State and Ole Miss, and really the godfather of SEC radio, SEC talk radio. I mean, he used to do this show back when I was where you are right now, Trey, called Southern Sports Tonight. I listened to it every night. I was never a Paul Feinbaum show fan, I get it. Like he's, kind of the face of the conference. But when Max would come on, man, I would get there and listen, and he'd crack me up. And then I started doing my college radio show at WVUA, the radio station at Alabama. And Max would come on every single week. And what's crazy is that my Bama Insider Tailgate show is pretty much the same exact show I used to do on WVUA, except Max would come on and he'd be like a weekly guest. I remember people showing up at the communication building in Alabama and going, it was a pre-recorded interview. They'd be like, where's Max at, right? So we got a podcast right now. All you got to do is go to the Bama Insider, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. You can download it. And we're going to talk college football every Sunday, Max and I, and just kind of, get into what is going on after the weekend and kind of set you up for the next week. Also, I did my 5 reasons why Nick Saban wants to beat LSU. I want LSU and Alabama to happen. I'm praying, just like you said, Tony. I just want to see this game so bad. I just look. All the talk that LSU did last year, it would only be right if they played. I mean, they're going to beat Alabama in recruiting. Then they're going to beat Alabama on the field, and look, roll Tide. What? F you? I mean, come on, let's see what happens. I mean, maybe LSU makes their whole season by beating Alabama again, right? I don't think they should be afraid to play Alabama. And look, and on a serious note, I get it, man. I had COVID. I know it's not an easy thing for everybody, and we just really hope and pray that anyone that has it around the LSU program gets better quickly, because it can, for some people it's really terrible. But just from a college football standpoint, I'd love to see these two teams play. At the same time, I hope that everyone is safe and and recovers from this. The other thing is this Friday night, if we play football, which I'm thinking we're going to play because I'm an optimist, we're going to be at the Flora-Bama. Trey's never been there before. Tony, you've never been there before. This is a bar that's on the beach, right on the line between Florida and Alabama. This is a place where Kenny Chesney writes songs about and comes and does concerts. It's one of the best bars ever in the whole world, and it's right in Florida and Alabama, right on Perdido Key in Orange Beach. We're going to be there to do the show. I'm going to be there on Friday night. Anyone that's watching comes out and says hey to me, Roll Tide. I'm going to give you a Daniel Moore 2021 calendar just because I love you guys so much, and I want you to come hang out. Whether you're an Alabama fan or a LSU fan or whatever, that's what we're going to do. We'll be there 6 to 8 this Friday night. And in Florida, they don't have all the the mask restrictions and stuff. They kind of went through that, and so you just come out and hang out. That'll be Friday night from 6 to 8. So that's what I got going on. We went long tonight, guys, but I'm going to tell you, I really enjoyed talking football. I was pretty fired up. Thank you.
Punches were thrown tonight. Almost. We kept it classy tonight, but it was a lot of fun. Thank you, Nick, as always, for hosting this thing. And thank you guys for tuning in and liking and commenting as always.
And last thing I want to say is make sure you check out Tony's columns, whatever he's writing, on BamaInsider.com. Trey's Pirates podcast for anyone that's a Pirates fan.
Please.
Thanks for watching, guys. We'll do it again next Monday, 6 o'clock. This is Monday Night Quarterback on Bama Insider's YouTube channel and on our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get it. Roll Tide.